So in this segment, we're going to be trying to define kind of austerity a little bit, because I've seen some conversation on people saying austerity is about public sector pay. I was like, what? I've never heard anyone define austerity like that. So, there are a couple of different definitions of austerity you can kind of look at. So the one mentioned here is difficult economic conditions created by government measures to reduce public expenditure. So that's one definition for it. Another one from Wikipedia is, in economic policy, austerity is a set of political economic policies that aim to reduce government budget deficits through spending cuts, tax rises, or a combination of both. So the issue with using this definition is you would kind of struggle a little bit to levy this at the Tories, just because Wikipedia have a dark mode. Ain't no way. Let's go. Because we did see tax cuts under the Conservative Party in certain areas, like income tax, for example. They cut the top rate, and they also changed the threshold of when people started paying tax, for example. But we did see massive spending cuts. So it's one or the other. So it depends how you define it. But it's normally aimed at reducing the government deficit rather than just the overall government spending. So it depends. For me, I would always go with this definition of austerity. I think this is the one. Difficult economic conditions created by a government, measures to reduce public expenditure, or typically it's done to kind of shrink the state. This idea that David Cameron pushed, our big society, that charities and essentially society will step in when the government backs out of helping the vulnerable in society, which we know didn't happen because there are many deaths linked to austerity. So I think the idea of linking it to public sector pay is one of the silliest arguments I think I've ever heard. The issue with linking it to spending, overall government spending, is that when we look at kind of overall government spending, you see in 2010-11 it kind of peaks at 971.8 billion, and then it goes down obviously under the Tories, 956.5, but then it goes up a little bit. So you'd have to argue we had austerity in 11-12, not in 12-13, if you're going to argue about total government spend. And then it goes down a little bit more 2013-14, goes up in 2014-15, goes down a little bit, goes up again in 2016-17, goes up in 17-18, goes down again, by a little bit, and then it goes up from 2019 onwards, goes back down in 21-22, and then goes back further down in it goes back up, in 22-23. It's a bit messy there just because the way I was reading the graph. But if you're talking about total government expenditure, you'd have to argue in some years we had austerity and in some years we didn't, and that would be a really strange argument to use, to be honest with you. If you want to argue spending as a percentage of GDP, that would be a stronger argument. But then, one of the things is if spending doesn't really go up, but growth goes up, you can see it kind of comes down a little bit. Under Labour, we saw kind of consistent growth. It dips, Labour's first year, 98, 99, and then it just goes up from 2001 onwards. Then you get some stagnation here around 2004 to about 2007, and then it goes up because of the Great Recession. So that's a percentage of our GDP, and then it goes down consistently under the Tories, then spikes back up during COVID, and comes back down. So it depends on what metrics you use. I think I'd just go off overall government spending. But again, it depends, because I would always link it to how people are treated in society as well. And we have seen the government kind of change course on rhetoric, this kind of Labour government, because when we look at kind of the austerity stuff they were pushing, and I'll do a deeper dive into the kind of talks around the budget anyways, we have seen kind of Labour talk more optimistically about things coming up.
Hello, good evening. Well, today was really about optimism. An investment summit championing the businesses pouring money into the UK with a shiny new number attached, £63 billion, the amount of new investment. Keir Starmer said this is a great moment to back Britain. Rachel Reeves said she's never been more optimistic. This is a government that's been on a journey in its first 100 days in power. Perhaps an acknowledgement that they haven't always got the tone right. It's been a bit too bleak, a bit too gloomy.
That's something businesses have complained about, saying, Labour needs to be more optimistic about things. And so I do wonder what kind of promises they've made to certain businesses for that investment. We're going to do a separate video on Eli Lilly, but it looks like Labour might be allowing certain more kind of, quote, experimental drugs to be tested on people, things like Ozempic and those kind of weight loss drugs. Labour are talking about using those on people who are overweight and people who are both overweight and unemployed, in order to help get them back into work. Even though there are lots of kind of jobs where, unless you're like seriously obese, like there are still a lot of jobs you can do, given that office-based jobs are predominantly on the computer.
I've been thinking quite a lot about an interview I did in September with Andy Haldane, the former chief economist at the Bank of England. Now, he's not an enemy. He's the kind of guy the government want and need to get on side. And as the months rolled on, I felt like this interview has taken on more significance. The first thing he said was, stop being so gloomy. The government's generated a fear and foreboding and uncertainty among businesses and investors, which he said was unfortunate because just after the election there was a sense of renewal, a confidence about the UK.
It's because, Labour kept pushing this idea that things were going to change and be different, and that kind of does boost optimism. When you talk positively about change, but then you talk about a painful budget coming, why would businesses want to invest? If you're producing things or providing services, why would you want to invest in a country that's looking at significant cuts? It doesn't make sense. The way that Labour are talking, that we're going to be entering a recession, it feels like.
There has definitely been a course correction on this. We've seen it today. He also called on Rachel Reeves to change the fiscal rule to get debt falling, which puts in jeopardy, he said, our ability to invest and to grow, and said it should be tweaked to weigh the assets we create as well as the liabilities. Now,
the whole idea of the fiscal rule is so dumb, to reduce debt as a percentage of GDP, like that, that is an important thing to do. But if you set kind of a hard target, it doesn't really make sense, because you need to borrow money to invest into the economy. When you look at France, again, I do mention France a lot, their debt to GDP ratio is over 120%, but still they found money to nationalise EDF, because that will generate the taxpayers' money. It will pay itself back over time, and that way you grow the economy with that money, especially given the fact that they managed to cap their energy prices so that more French people had more disposable income. And what else they did? They also, made loads of money off the British taxpayer, because EDF supply lots of energy to us. So they made loads of money off us and our stupid policies. So, they won twice, really.
Is that this is exactly what the Chancellor is going to do in the budget. This interview was done in September. I have no idea, obviously, if the PM and the Chancellor watched it. But what it does tell me is that this is a government that has listened to the concerns of business voices, potentially with a bit of alarm. And it also tells me that this is a government that has changed course.
So it's possible they have, but again, in terms of on austerity, like talking about that painful budget, I don't think they have done. And when asked to define austerity, a Labour MP just couldn't do it.
If there are cuts to justice and to transport, as well as to Angela Rayner's department, do you agree that would amount to austerity?
I'm not getting involved in the what-ifs, because she's absolutely got this, and we'll see what she delivers.
It's not about speculating.
It's a faith-based argument, which, again, we're talking about, reducing public expenditure, which is what she's trying to do. These cuts aim to reduce public expenditure. So you'd have to argue that it kind of is austerity.
For the contents of
even if you argue the total spend of the budget is higher than it was in the previous year, again, you would have to, if you were going to make the argument, you would have to argue in some years we had austerity and some years we didn't, if your argument is over total spend.
Budget. I'm just asking you the straightforward question. If there are cuts to unprotected departments from anything from sort of 10 to 20%, in your mind, is that austerity?
The reason that we are here is because we've got an absolutely massive a country that is really sceptical about politics. They don't trust us.
I wonder why the public don't trust you. Is it because you promise change and then we see more of the same? Is it because Labour voted in on a wave of optimism? You said there will be no more austerity, and now we're looking down the barrel of austerity. Do you think that's why Labour and, more importantly, Keir Starmer's poll ratings are so low? Do you think there's a reason why people don't trust you?
Rachel has said there will be no return to austerity. And
you can say that, I think in 2017, Theresa May said austerity is over. It never ended for people that were unemployed. It never ended for the people that were sick. It never ended for the people on disabilities. So you can say something, but showing it is more important. And from what we can see, austerity never left. Not really.
Believer.
Right. I suppose it depends what your definition of
so we've got there you go.
Austerity actually is.
Which is true. There's no formal definition of it. Not fully. But the idea that it's based around public sector pay is kind of comical. I've never heard this one before. It's completely new to me. but it seems to be a very sore spot for Labour. You know, we've seen over 300,000 excess deaths in Great Britain linked to austerity, finds a study. And there are different studies, having a much higher or lower number. You know, more than 300,000 excess deaths in Britain in recent years can be attributed to spending cuts to public services and benefits introduced by UK government pursuing austerity policies, according to an academic study. The authors of the study suggest additional deaths between 2012 and 19 prior to the pandemic reflect an increase in people dying prematurely after experiencing reduced income, ill health, poor nutrition, and housing and social isolation. And, you know, more than that, you know, we know that the Tories hollowed out the NHS, so that can, you know, absolutely austerity can be linked to a lot of the COVID deaths that we saw as well. You know, I did try and look at things like public sector pay. You know, for teachers in 2021, their real terms pay is 8% lower than it was in 2007. So, you know, I understand that Labour can't restore absolute parity to public sector pay employees. They are trying, and I'll give them credit for that. But things like austerity go way beyond public sector pay. Like I don't know where people have got this definition from. You know, we saw in other countries like Ireland, you know, public sector pay did restore much earlier on. Whether this in real terms or not, I don't know. It's hard to make comparisons with different countries. But you can see Ireland's kind of pay for, total public sector service pay and pensions go up significantly, really from 2014 onwards. I don't know if you can fully argue that austerity ended for them in 2014, but you can see kind of the rates going up. And for the UK, it just really didn't happen. We saw. Oops, do you want to click on that? You can kind of see public sector, essentially average earnings for public sector just really stagnate under the Tories. Under Labour. You can see it go up very, very steadily. And then under the Tories, it just stagnates really badly. So, in that respect, that is one aspect of austerity, yeah. And, for the people who kept arguing, for the people who followed for this long, I guess, and for the people who I think are trying to change the definitions of austerity, I've got a message for you guys.
For an incredible year. We've been at this for a long time, and you continue to uplift me and accept me. So thank you. And to the rest of you, the non-believers, the underachievers, the tweet and deleters, you guys make me sick to my stomachs, fam. Honestly, if you guys want to look in my eyes, you guys want to do something? That's what I thought. No.
So for those guys, apart from one, you know where I am. You know where the channel is. If you want to try and redefine austerity, I'd love to do it. I'd love to have that conversation with you guys because, honestly, from what I'm reading about this budget, it's not looking good. The fact that they're writing to the Prime Minister and not the Chancellor about how bad these spending cuts are, it's not looking good. So, I suggest you guys either look at the kind of videos you guys are producing if you're so desperate to protect Team Red, to actually understand that that's not your job. Your job is to inform your audience to the best of your ability. And if you're one of those ones pushing this idea that Labour aren't going to do austerity, based on the things that we are reading currently and based on the definitions you're arbitrarily creating in order to defend Labour, you're an embarrassment. You're an embarrassment. So if you want to argue this point of view, I'm more than happy to. Is my channel, your channel, a neutral channel, something with a moderator perhaps. I will happily have this conversation with anyone apart from one goon. But you know where I am. So again, if you want to do something, if you want to say something, say it. If you want to defend Team Red, if you want to actually try and embarrass me in a debate, let's see it. Because I'm honestly, I relish the challenge. Because I actually enjoy learning things, unlike you guys, evidently. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.